And we are live, and welcome everyone to this Sunday evening. I am delighted to welcome Shaman Hawk to the show this evening. I was following him on YouTube and then on Instagram, and then I was drawn to his other channels. He's a very interesting man with lots and lots of life experience, and I just absolutely loved what he had to say. And I shared his channel with other people. They're like, "Wow, this guy speaks a lot of sense. You've got to get him on." I was like, "Yes," and I'm really fortunate that he said yes. So, Shaman Hawk, welcome to the podcast, and I wondered if you could just tell, for those of you who don't know who you are, a little bit about yourself.
Okay, I come from a different background, Native American and then, Anglo American. I went through traditional shamanic training back in the late 60s for 10 years. And since then, I finished my apprenticeship in 1978. Since then, I've been living the shamanic life, and traveling the world doing that. And it's been interesting. I never thought I'd see some of the situations that I see it now in my life going on in the world, but surprise, surprise. Um, Happy to be here. I really enjoyed our conversation yesterday, and I'm
Yeah,
sure.
thank you so much, because we and I took up too much, a lot of your time. It was a
No,
good idea. It was brilliant to speak to you live, and we were just talking for ages. So I try and keep this to about 45 minutes. But if we don't get through stuff, and we enjoy doing this, and it's useful for your for your viewers and my viewers, then by all means, let's do it again. I felt like I could talk to you forever. And one of the interesting things, I think this is like fantastic coming from you. That you're a spiritual man. You've been awake spiritually for a long time, but you're a man's man. You're a real man. You're a doer man as well. And I wondered if you could just talk a little bit about how you've got these different life experiences, but they all come together to make a whole.
well, I mean, I'm that boomer generation, and we all grew up with a man should be that person, that the living example of strength, ethics, moral fiber, some ethical foundation, and walk your talk. Live your ethics. But go out and a man should be adventurous. You got to test yourself. You don't know, especially young boys need adventure, need fear factor. They need the danger. They need to figure out who they are. And it's been proven psychologically. Men need that. Boys need that head banging kind of jarring emotional action to properly form their brains. They just sitting in the schoolyard all the time doesn't do it. You have to go out and just scare yourself. Go do those scary adventures and brag to your buddies about it. But we lost that somewhere almost globally. That's not really true. When I spent a lot of time in Eastern Europe and the post-communist bloc before the scamdemic, I still see a lot of that real manhood out there, and I really enjoyed living in that part of the world. Um, but I would just go. I'd get curious about something and just go. So I'm a diver. I'm a pilot. I've sailed a lot of blue water time. I was a United States Marine. I was a MMA fighter before it was legal. When they had the big cages that were in warehouses or under bridges and stuff like that. I just did that. And I just went out for any adventure I could just to test myself. We never know when life's going to end. Everybody thinks about how you're going to live your life, but no one thinks about the last chapter and how you want that to read, because we don't know when that last chapter is coming. So live every moment.
Live every moment. Yeah, wow, that's a broad range of things. And when you were telling me yesterday, I'm a pilot. I can fly a plane. I can dive in the sea. I've been in the Marines. I was like, wow, this is brilliant. And this is like it's not self-limiting. Your attitude is not self-limiting. And I think you've just said a really important thing there, that if you test yourself, you get more confidence in yourself, because you find that things aren't as dramatic as you think they are. And you've just said about your MMA fighting. We had a bit of a chat about this yesterday, that this is one of the other things that we've got in common, and fighters have this in common. When you first of all get punched in the face, it's pretty like, oh, what happens? but actually, it's just a really weird thing to say, but you get used to it, and it isn't as bad as you think it is. Actually, accidentally punching yourself in the face, which I've done a few times, like boxing, is way worse than
Hmm.
somebody else doing it for you. So, tell me a bit about that sort of brave part of you, and how you develop that. Were you always brave, or what?
You know, it's interesting. Of all the stimuli human beings have to choose from, they choose fear the most, and it just baffles me. But anyway, fear is usually of the unknown. I don't know what's going to happen. So the first thing I was thinking of as a kid, it's when some older Marines told me back in my early teens, look, it's okay to be scared. Okay, you can do that, but you also have to really be clear. Are you fearful, or what you feel in your stomach, is that your body ready for combat or ready for action? Don't get the two confused. And bravery is not being scared. Bravery is being scared, but still having the discipline and the drive to do what you need to do, whether it's fighting something or it's rescuing. I've done a lot of rescue work.
Mhm.
And yeah, you're always nervous because you don't do it. But the thing is, it comes back to, like you're saying, with confidence. You have to have trust in yourself. And the only way you get that is by doing dangerous things wisely, you know.
In a controlled way. And do you think parents, is there anything that parents can do for their children to sort of help and support the
Absolutely.
growth of that?
Yeah, but my dad, he was one of those crazy drunk Indians most of my life. But when he sobered up, we got to know him really well when I was like 14, 15 years old. And he got into the passion of surfing and sailing when he retired from the Air Force. He would take my brother and I sailing off the coast of Cape Canaveral, Florida, when he knew class 4 thunderstorms, which is just under the qualification of a hurricane, when he knew that that was coming. And we figured out that he was doing this, and he goes, "Boys, you always can't sail on a nice day. You got to practice this." And so we got used to storm riding with him.
Wow.
And yeah, but that saved me and my brother's life because during Hurricane Gilbert, we were on a boat built 1906 that rolled over, started to sink, hit a sandbar. We spent the last part of the hurricane out there at sea on the ship as it's breaking apart. But we made it into shore finally. But it was just things like that. With one of my daughters, when she started flying with me when I was 4, she doesn't play well with others, so she went about with me a lot. And by the time she was 6, she could take off the airplane, and I just had my hands on my lap, my feet on the rudder pedals, and she went off and navigated, and she's been my high risk one. She's also a deep underwater diver where she goes down deep enough where it's nighttime in the middle of the day. But I did things like that with my daughters to find out what their real thrill was. And you got to be out there with them, ready to do the dangerous stuff and get hurt with them and be right there. But now they're all really independent, brave women. So you got, yeah, parents have a lot of it. So, and if it's not just the parents, the parents should be able to supply the environment that's conducive to that child's passions and development.
Hmm. And so, as well as you know putting your children in that controlled environment, like you say, I mean, I instinctively also did the same thing, but it's not taught to do that. In fact, the opposite. I remember when my kids are like in their teens now, and people would be horrified at the sort of things that I would allow them to do, like safely. So I would say, right, they're going to want to go upstairs and crawl upstairs when they're too young to know how to get up there. So I let them crawl up a few steps, but I was there behind them to catch them, so that when they just tumbled down a little bit, it would never hurt them, but they'd understand what the consequences were then. Because you try and explain to a toddler that's just starting to crawl, don't go upstairs because you hurt yourself. They're like, what does hurt yourself mean? I don't know. But if you
Right.
if you show them, but without them damaging themselves really severely, they become much wiser. They're going to do way less stupid stuff.
Well, how else are they going to learn?
Yeah.
Because we can say all the things, but it's like you just said, they don't know what hurt yourself means and how, and they don't understand gravity, kinetic energy, kinetic force. you know, consequential impact, things like that. They're not going to get that. But I did exactly the same thing. Be right there and let them get the first 1 or 2 seconds of uh-oh, and say, yeah, see, you could have gone that way. Now let's go further and get a little bit farther behind, but you have to be there with them to do that, you know. But,
And then that's maybe your, because
go ahead.
they can take risks around you because they're your parents, and I mean you're their parents, and they will. And this is why they kick off, don't they? And you push the boundaries with you. And if you constantly put them in cotton wool, they won't get to experience that. And I think what you said at the beginning was really important. It's really important for neural development,
Mm-hmm.
because that's how your brain learns. It learns just by doing things as well. You can't just like read a book and know this. You have to climb the climbing frame. You have to fall over. You have to do this stuff. And if you don't start, and that's another thing I want to talk to you about. So some kids have been brought up and are now adults in that sort of cushioned environment, and now they're adults. And I think it's now harder for them, but not impossible, because they've got a lot further to fall. They haven't got this grounding, so they can't take on these new challenges because they've never fell off a bike and done all those things as well. But I do still think their brain and their confidence can develop if they start doing it now, even as an adult. And what do you think about that?
Well, that's where these camps, these gladiator camps or the warrior camps come up with. Even adults that are, they grew up soft, they have an office job, but then they have this innate hunger in them for who their core is, to want to do that adventure. So they go out to a place like here in Central Texas where they'll hang out on a ranch, or do the survivalist prepper camping and things like that, and test themselves and like, wow, I get it now. One of the things I want to do with the boat that I'm building is take people out for adventures on the sea, because this boat it's only a sailboat with no engine. So we'll be
Wow.
rowing and things and stay out there during the storms, because you don't have an engine to get to shore, and learn to read the weather and go for that kind of adventure. But, um, I really encourage those kind of things with people. Go out camping, minimalistic. Take the very, very least, the smallest backpack, the smallest shelter, and go out and test yourself. You can do that at any age.
Brilliant. I think that's really inspiring to hear, and at any age. And so when I teach boxing, I tend to teach people that are older that want to do this, and they start off just trying to want to learn the moves, and then I want to take more risks, and it's because they get more confident, and they do it later in life. And when they step through those rings, those ropes, and get into the ring, and they're by themselves, literally at that time they're thinking, wow, what what have I done? But when they come out of it the other end, they're like, I did it. And what I
Mm-hmm.
find is then they're making all sorts of different life choices. They're like, well, you know what, I applied for this job, I did this and I did that, because they're more confident now. They're so much happy, they're so much more confident about who they are, that everything they do is different. Their mindsets, it's like their brain has been wired differently. Did you know what I mean?
Oh yeah, but you also gave a different level of consequence. See, so there, and the person that grew up in that, like you say, the cotton walls, and then let's say the softer job and things, and there are consequences like a reprimand. The boss rejected an idea and everything like that, compared to where you're like, hey, go in through the ropes and there's an opponent. Go beat that person. They're going to try and beat you too. Get busy. So you raise this level of consequence. Now, when they go into the boss, like, hey, Bucko, I need a raise. You need to give me some more money. Yeah, okay. No, yeah, okay, whatever. That's their consequence. And they go about their business. And that's the thing, always raising the bar of the risk factor of consequence or whatever. And after a while, asking for the raise, quitting the job, applying for a new job. It's like the most they can do is say no. So what? But
And you're not
especially
so
for women.
offended. Oh,
Yeah,
brilliant,
but
brilliant. And I never thought about it like that before, but that's right, isn't it? Because a lot of the reasons why people are offended is because it's because they're like they've got nowhere to go. That was what they believed in, and it was there. And once you take that away from them, they're like, they're really scared now because they don't know what else to do or be. Whereas if it's, even though it's a minor thing, well, when they get that confidence, like, oh, you know, it doesn't matter. I'll move on to the next thing. I don't care if they like me. I don't care if someone says something I don't like, because I've got other things to do. I'm not limited.
Mm-hmm. But you know, too, especially with women, you know, because my daughters grew up with martial arts. I mean, when they could, as soon as they could hold a weapon, they were learning to train with it. And I would put tape and foam and everything, and they'd take these sticks and go out in the backyard, just beat the hell out of each other. You know, I mean, it was a soft impact, but they literally learned the operation of the weapon. They learned their aggression, defense mechanisms. So when any boys gave them any kind of a grief or bullying in school, it didn't last long. You know, they went and got busy with that. So girls especially need to have those combative arts if they're inclined to. And if they're not that aggressive like that, at least, you know, work with the defensive part where they have options, mental options. And then they become more confident. You know, they're not, um, horses are great for women. You know, they relate horses and girls relate really well to each other. And it's good for a confidence for a girl to be able to maneuver and control 1,000-pound animal.
Oh, yeah, I never thought of that. That's what it is, isn't it?
Yep.
And so I've always thought that people, you know, who do healing, and are shamans and things like that, I've always thought you have to be really confident in what you're doing, because somebody else, the person that you're working with, they don't know what's going on, and so you have to take that responsibility on. And sometimes it's a lot of, you know, deep stuff comes out, and so you have to come across as not only just talk, you can't just get away with blagging it, you know, as we say in England. You've really got to be, you know, in control and confident. um is it, would you notice that about yourself? Do you think that's like important, what I've just said?
Yeah, because I've had good results with people that had terminal illness. And I'm real self-critical. I really like to know why. And I want to make sure I don't get any visions of grandeur and, you know, because there's that overconfidence that can come with success.
Mm-hmm.
And each case is unique. So the real confidence comes from knowing yourself and your core truth and really accepting that, whether you like it or not. You have to be honest about yourself and accept that. Because in shamanic healing, or what we would call, for lack of a better term, energy healing, um, you have to be able to lose yourself in the empathic journey of working with that person. And if you can't lose yourself and be secure to know that you're not going to get lost, so you're abandoning yourself to be able to embrace and empath what they're going through, to know what to do, because you're that person that's that dynamo that has to create the change that they can logically accept. Because these are people that when they come to you in a situation like that, they have totally opened up themselves, you know, in that ultimate, that puts you in that ultimate responsibility position. So you owe it to them, and you owe it to your own performance to know yourself that well. And so the only thing existing in you at that time is that fine core of your personal truth. And that's where the confidence, like, no matter what, I know that I will do whatever I need to do and be okay with that, play whatever part I need to play, you know, because I can always come back to me, if that makes sense. You know, it's,
That makes a lot of sense. And I'm speaking to you yesterday, I was really struck by how powerful a man you are, but also how, you know, controlled you were. And that is where I feel a lot of the narrative around at the minute is all about male and female rather than masculine and feminine energy. And you know, the message is confused. I mean, there is a balance of energy within us all. And I'm all the time you're speaking and listening to you on your podcast, there is this real balance between being controlled and articulate, and just saying this is what we, you know, we need to do, and this is what, you know, the way life is, but also there's a passion, and there is a strength, and that balance comes across, and you come across as a very, you know, knowledgeable, like somebody would like listen to you because you're powerful, but you're not overpowering and angry and all these other things.
No, and honestly, when I see men like that, that's just a big red flag for a lot of insecurities that they're trying to project this other stuff with. You know, being loud, obnoxious, wearing black clothes all the time. You know, it's like, I'm a badass. Okay. You know, I mean, if you want to believe that. But some of the most dangerous men I know, and from going through 4 war zones, the most dangerous men I know were the goofiest, most playful, you know, dogs and kids loved them. People in war zones absolutely feared them with good reason, but when they're around children and dogs and animals, they're just joking. You'd never know who their history, you know. And you know, it reminded me, me and some guys were going to go to a combat range where you're practicing with live fire ammunition and going for these tactics, and it's as real as you can get without, you know, being an actual battle like that. And we went into this one guy's house, and he's sitting down there. He's got barrettes in his hair. He's got this pink tutu around him. He goes, "Come on, we got plenty of time. You know, the range is opening late. We're having tea." And his daughters are like, "Oh, here." So they put these things around us. So we're in our camouflage gear with these little ballerina dresses on, barrettes in our hair and all that. And his wife came in to relieve us so we could leave, you know, and she's looking at us, and she's just shaking her head like, okay. And then we're like, okay, got to go. Got to take off our ballerina and take the barrettes out of our hair, you know, and then go to the gun range, you know. But I look back on that, and that just made his daughters and friends so happy that we would sit down and play with them. And you look at the bigger picture, there's us in camo gear with rifles and weaponry around as we're sitting there sipping tea on these little chairs, you know. But that's the full panavision of manhood in my mind. Over here is the side that your enemies don't want to ever meet. But over here is the other side that makes the women and children feel confident for. And when if they fear danger, they want you to bring this other side up to the front. You know, so then you can go back to being peaceful and playful and stuff like that. But in order for a man to develop like that fully, he has to be able to be in both environments. So remember one time as a kid, I was 15 or 16 years old running a martial arts group. And some of the older women that were mentors and instructors are like, you know what, you're great here in the fighting environment, but you're lopsided. So they had me taking care of these, like from 6 years old on down, you know. And here, first thing I tried to do is militarize it, and that did not work. You know, finally I'm asking some of the girls, what is there to do? And they're like, nothing. You just have to be here. And I'm looking for a linear thought, a solution to problems, and all this, man. You know, I had to learn to just be, and that shifted me a lot. And in the teenage years, for boys, you're all on overdrive, nothing but hormones and just explosive energy. So that's a really important part too that young boys have to go through.
Initiation into manhood, and I think you just explained it beautifully then. And this is the kind of, you know, partnership that, you know, that women are looking for. I think I'm seeing it a lot more, that we've tried to, you know, pacify everybody and everything in a way to try and, you know, well, if you're peaceful all the time and you don't stand up, you don't upset people, then, you know, that you know, that's a better world. But it's not, because not everybody is like that, and people will take advantage. And, you know, that there are ways to do it, and it isn't just like going out and be angry and shouting. It can be going to your, you know, local town planning meeting and will say, no, 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 you're not building that here. And you can do it in an articulated way, but you are standing up, you know, with that masculine energy and protecting your environment. And you know, I think there's a lot less of that. And
Yeah.
it's a shame. And I think this is why we are being we're being run over by people who don't have that moral core about what's right and wrong. And we have to learn how to sort of stand up and stand together in a constructive way. Have you noticed that your neck of the woods over the pond?
Well, so what, that last sentence again?
I said, have you noticed the same in your
Yeah.
neck of the woods over the pond?
Oh, yeah. You have to have order. There has to have order. Nature has order, you know. And right, what I'm seeing now is the narrative seems to be disorder is just fine. Anything goes. And that doesn't work. It can't work. And so it's I also want to point out there's two completely different lines of thinking, for male and female that are not that you will never bring together. The woman, she thinks the way I see it, in the sphere. Everything is in this sphere happening all at once. And also on the Native American side of my family, on Native American on the east side, we're mostly matriarchal. So they had the inner circle of the grandmothers, outer circle of the mothers, and then the maiden warrior circle outside that, where the men and the young girls who weren't married, were having children yet. So they were great at community because they can think of everything at once like that, all these other things. Where men are real linear, which is great for combat, it's great for hunting, it's great for building. And so within the Iroquois empires, or what was called the confederacies, women were the government, and then the men were on the outside taking care of things, making things done. And so these things have to be taught at an early age, that you cannot understand this gender, and there's only two, okay, male and female in my mind. So this is why too we tell young boys, when they're, hey, guys will say, my girlfriend wakes up in the middle of the night and she has to talk about something. I can't figure out what her point is. And when I ask her, what's the point? She tells me I'm not listening, blah, blah, blah. Like, dude, the only thing you can do is just shut up. She's downloading. Just shut up and listen. Okay. And then like, okay, but then no, shut up. Just listen. Okay. And that's it. And then afterwards she'll go, oh, thank you. Love you. That's it. Okay. And you're like, sure. But meanwhile, the women have to understand when something happens, guys are thinking. They're not saying anything. She's asking a bunch of questions. He's like just stop. Because he's going 1, 2, 3, 4, priority, shifting along. He went into like fix it mode, combative mode, purpose mode. Leave him alone. Go make a sandwich, fix a drink. Just leave him alone. He knows what to do. And so this is where both genders have to just like leave each other alone for this thing. Or like when women go to these town meetings and they're like pissed off, I'm not going to make any suggestions. I'm going to let her just go off on all the counselors. I'm not going to say shit, man, excuse me, and that's what men, so that they have to learn these things about each other. And we did that when I was in school as a boomer. Okay. That just doesn't happen anymore. It's just like, oh, any gender. No, each one has this role. And now that's not saying you can't cross in the middle a little bit. Some guys are awesome with kids. I love working with kids. Some guys just don't. And some women are just not domestic. They'd rather be out on the construction site with the guys. Fine.
I think you've just really eloquently described it there, where traditional roles is one thing, but it's more like a mindset. And I think this is what the problem is the whole of the sort of society and the gender at the minute is focused on things like what hairstyles people can have, what color clothes they can wear, what type of clothes they can wear, what jobs that they can do. And that is not that isn't what makes you, just like you said, male or female. It's just describing stuff in 3D. And whereas really, that there can be women, you can be feminine and everything, but doesn't mean that you don't like fighting or you don't like doing construction, but it just means it's the way your brain works. But it
Hmm.
does mean you're more likely not to do it. But it doesn't mean that that isn't how you haven't got a female working brain just because you enjoy that stuff. I think this is the thing that I'm sadly seeing, that because when I was little, I never used to like playing with dolls. Never, and teddy bears. Never used to like it. I used to pick up the Lego. I used to make things and create things. I was a creator. I was an inventor, and because I was constantly looking around me, and finding stuff that wasn't there that I wanted to be there. So I was a creator. To make me a boy because I like Lego. And likewise, some of the guys were like really interested in some of things around the home, like they would do like the ironing and like in play school. I mean, there were girls. It's a practical thing to iron things. Well, for other people, I don't iron anything, but these days, oh
But but at the same time, that's what's happening now. It's like, okay, well, they look at you, you're playing with Legos and you're creating it, but there's this element that says, oh, well, you're really a boy. We should just go ahead and butcher you up and make you a boy now and give you all these medications. But maybe and especially in these teenage years when you're exploring everything, that means you should just capture this one time period and make this decision for this person that's going to influence the rest of their life. No, there are all these phases. Just let them do all the phases. With what's going on today, they would have told any one of my daughters, "Oh, you're definitely a man and trapped in a girl's body." No, they're just really, and we can't even say that they have a strong male side. Because I'm like, well, no, that's really dismissing feminine energy. Then why can't you just be a strong female? You're a combative female sometimes. Okay, well, you know, sometimes you're just difficult. You
yeah.
know, you know. But
And I
this,
think this is really true. And I was always been in male dominated jobs. I like the company of men. I like the sort of stuff they do. But do I have a male brain? No, definitely. I just don't think like them whatsoever. I just really don't. I just like doing the stuff they like to do. And you're absolutely right. They would have probably cajoled me and persuaded me. I don't think they would have. I'm quite difficult to persuade, to be honest with you. But they would have tried to. And
Mhm.
and maybe we have to, as you rightly say, one of the sad things I'm seeing is that there's beautiful examples of transitioned children, but they're not showing you the hard side. They're not showing you that these kids are on medication for life, and these medications have serious side effects, and that 70% of people who transition take their own life within 5 years, because I mean they're on this medication all the time, and they're not showing. Yeah, they're showing one side of things as usual, right?
Well, they're not just sharing one side; they're censoring the other one.
Yeah.
Because there's so many videos now of these kids that are retransitioning, talking about how they made a huge mistake, and these videos will get taken down. Well, why can't you acknowledge this person's truth? See, that shows you that there's a real agenda out there. Call me crazy conspiracy theorist, but I mean, we talk here about the First Amendment, your freedom of speech, but the other part of that is also your freedom to listen, and they're taking that away. They're censoring the truth from the other person. It says, yeah, I went down that road and it was a wrong turn for me, and here's why. Because it seems if you want to be fair in your diversity, you should allow fully informed people if they're going to make a real choice about it. Kind of
Mm.
like that, kind of like they didn't give us all the information about that experiment they wanted most of the world to participate during the last 3 years. You know,
So that's
uh,
right. And I think people always like to try and see the best in things. So if they're told something like, doing this is a good idea and here's an example, they don't want to think that actually it might be a bit worse than that. They will always want to see the good side of things. And it's not always, there's never, it's never always going to be good, and it's never always going to be bad. It's never, that just isn't how life works anyway. So to suggest something and say it's always going to be perfect is, well, I've never
but
experienced perfection in my life without.
no,
I don't know about you.
I've never seen anything that worked out perfectly. I've had things work out better than planned. I've had things work out worse, but I've never ever seen anything that the government was in control of turn off to be a rosy afternoon, man. So yeah, I'm a little suspicious of that. But in all
Yeah.
honesty, it's really about respect too. If you're respecting someone, you're going to give them all the information about it, because I've been in a lot of positions of construction management and important jobs. And I would tell people, I told them all the bad stuff about the job as well. Here you're going to be paid a lot, but these are the things you're going to hate being here. Here's your choice, because you want to give that somebody the courtesy or respect. You should do that with everything. Let the person
Wise
have a
words.
chance. You know,
And then maybe you get the best people by doing that, because they're fully informed. But also, it's very difficult for people to learn consequences if they're not given the whole argument, are they? Because when it goes wrong, they're not sure why. Because maybe it wasn't pointed out what happened, so they keep making the same mistake again and again.
well, I also told my upper management, like, look, if I tell all the people all the good stuff and they get hit with some issues, that's going to mess up my productivity.
Yeah.
They're going to hit this wall to go, wait a minute, now what? Surprise. Where if I say, oh, this is what he was talking about, I need to come up with a solution for this. You see, because now you lied to these people by omission, and then these people are now working for you with your project or on your job or whatever, and now you've hurt your production again, because now they're like, okay, I don't want to deal with this. Now you have to find somebody else. So you're not doing yourself any favors. So governments aren't doing themselves any favors either by just not telling people the whole truth about anything. Because then, like we're having in the States here, you know, if we had a real pandemic come up, sorry, they can't be disappointed that no one trusts them anymore. And that puts the whole country at risk then.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely correct. I mean, I was saying to my work colleagues the other day, we're getting some kind of emergency alert, and I said, I don't trust them. I'm turning my phone off. I'm putting it in a Faraday cage. And they said, well, what about if something really bad happens? I said, well, they've lost my trust now. So even if it did, I'm not going to take. I'm not going to take their advice. So it's backfired horrendously, and
Yep.
I don't think they're going to get that back. And which is a shame. But but people are starting to. So the consequences are really, really pushing hard on people. Is they're really, really pushing back.
Well, see, when we're like going back to people that grow up in, like you say, the cotton walls, that's most of your politicians.
Yeah.
See, they've never had that combative lifestyle where they had to really fight for the position or fight to consequences or in conditions of a hard job. They get elected with the hopes that they'll constantly get reelected and enjoy this job where they can give themselves pay raises, health benefits, and so on. And so that gives them a completely disillusional view of the working class, which is their base, their constituents. So they think that, oh, I'm going to have this idea and I can get them to believe this, maybe for a little while. And then all of a sudden it's not working. And so then they try to step up their game and try to, lie to you with a more creative lie, you know. And then finally you're just kind of like, do you say turn it off? And like, this just isn't working. And then you have now, when they're trying to establish control and get everybody into this one mentality of thinking, they've done the exact opposite when everybody realizes I can only trust me. I can't really trust my environment. I can't trust the leaders and authorities. So now what they've really done is created a larger pool of individualistic thinkers. And I think that's what they're realizing and going, uh-oh, now what? Because now what if there was a big emergency, and this is what bothers me, there's no one to really trust to get the whole information from.
No, it's going to turn a light on. Just bear with me. Yeah. Oh, that's better. we're in different time zones, aren't we? So
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we could talk about all this, all day long. So whatever, the consequences have been, it's certainly woken people up to their power. And a lot of people are doing things that they never did before. They're going to protest, or they're going to speak to their MP. Before that, they were like, oh, am I allowed to say something? Am I allowed to tell that policeman, no, mate, you're not allowed to do that? And now what more people are like saying, I've got this, I've got a voice, I can do stuff. But a lot of other people as well are going into that truth, but they're sort of healing themselves as well. They're thinking, well, how did I not? Why did I just let everything happen before? Because this isn't just happen now. Why not? And so I've noticed a lot of people are doing some self healing with, they're using you know, they're using all sorts of different natural medicine and herbs and mushrooms and things like that to try and get their brain, because I realise that they're now in control of their life. They can't just rely on the government or whatever it is, health service to look after them. They're now in control, and that people are coming more and more to alternative types of medicines in order to try and get themselves stronger mentally and physically and spiritually as well, so they know who they are. And I was just wondering if you could just talk, about your shamanic work and the sort of things that you've seen, the sort of people that you see.
It's a wide variety, and it goes through these waves. It's interesting. So I'll get a lot of waves of people having dreams that come true. Then I get these waves of people like looking at the pointlessness of their life, wondering about if there's a life purpose, or they a wave of people wanting to create a big change and so on. So it's interesting how these waves of different mentalities come through. But I tell people a lot, no matter what their issue is, I have to go back again to the core I was talking about earlier. Like, do you know yourself? What makes you happy? Are you happy? What would make you happy? And so many times I don't know. One guy in Germany a couple of years ago was just like he said he had to make up a lie that he was coming someplace else to see me because of his status in the banking world. He said, "You look at my life. I am the ultimate successful German businessman, the beautiful wife, wonderful kids, nice car, blah 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 blah." He goes, "I'm ready to throw myself off a bridge. I don't know what would make me happy. I don't know." And so for a few series of appointments to get him down to his truth, and why he's in this point. And that's a long journey that a lot of people don't want to make, because then they fill up with regret and then they feel hopeless. So this is the other part where you have to you have to maintain this maintenance of in the work that you do, because the closer that people get to their core in the center, their perceptions of reality really start to change, and then their regrets and choices and things. But you always have to also say, it looks bad now as we're renovating the house. When we renovate a house, it makes a big mess. And then you have to do just as much work taking the trash outside. To keep giving these metaphors and the stages that we're going through, like you're tearing down this wall, but now we have to take that outside before we tear down the next wall. Otherwise, we're stepping all this trash. Now, when all is gone, now you see the core of what they had to work through. Now this is the easy part. And so it goes always, no matter it is, and there are no shortcuts. You can take all the drugs, whether it's ayahuasca, the peyote, they're drugs, all right? And they're going to give you a vision and all that, because just that's what drugs do. But the truth is, you have to be able to get in here sober, clean, detoxed, and be honest about the process. So once you can get into that, and another exercise to do that is look at every political issue, every moral and ethic fiber of your belief system and go, is that really how I feel about that issue? Or was that opinion given to me and I accepted it because we're pack animals as human beings? You may find out you don't agree with what everybody else does, and that's fine. That doesn't mean you have to share that if you know it's going to cause problems for you, but you have to at least admit that truth. And people just don't want to admit the truth about things with themselves.
I think that's really important. What you've said, and we're talking a lot about, especially men, especially young men who take their own lives. And because you can't escape this, and if you don't get it out, and in the UK they've talked a lot about this, reaching out to people and talking and blah blah blah. But what I feel is that this is where we've stopped. Men reaching out and talking, and then once you talk about it, everything's fixed. They haven't explained what the next bit is, and the fixing is, well, we'll be able to put you on some pills. And
Mm-hmm.
it's like, no, the pills just numb everything. They're not they're not curing anything. And the reason why you've hit this brick wall, whether it's that intense, or whether it's just you're fed up constantly, or people drink more, like they have to have the glasses of wine or whatever it is, a beer every night. All of this behavior is just trying to, it's self-medication, or it is real medication. And unless you deal with that thing inside, which is what they don't talk about, then it's just going to carry on until a point where it comes out. You're not going to be able to stop it. It will come out at some point, and at that point, it's destructive. Like you say, we've got a net, instead of like go into each room, and which we call decorating. I think you've called remodeling.
Mm-hmm.
That you've got to now tear the whole house down, and it's going to be a wreck, and you can't live in it for 3 months. But
Well, yeah,
but even still, you can still fix it. Then it's never too late.
right. You just be able, but let's go back on that metaphor. When you say you can't even live in this house anymore, it's such a wreck. That's the suicidal point,
Mm-hmm.
because people now, like, they can't live with themselves anymore. And the problem with the talking about it in a person, whether it's a one-on-one therapy or whatever, or if it's a community political issue, people don't take it to the next step. Like you're saying in this example, the next step is to get the pill, because the person that's the sounding board, the patient goes to see this person and talking to this person, saying, I'm opening up to you and I'm talking about my issues. And the person says, yeah, that's good. You did that. Here's your pill. Because the person that wants to give the pill doesn't have step two. And they don't have that, especially from if they get out of high school, go to college, become the therapist, they have zero life experience. I have a friend that's a very good therapist when she's talking to women about things, but she's giving child advice on how to raise your children. I'm Kristen, you've never had any kids. Okay, shut up. Okay, just and I can't. I have 4 daughters. Well, I have four. I had five. I can only give advice on those people. Okay, not general child raising. Overall. Okay, so the problem we're having in society, whether it's a one-on-one situation or it's a community global situation, is people don't have the next step from experience. Now, this goes back into the beginning of our conversation, is it's up to each person to go out there and get their life experience. So what I tell young men, because we have some younger guys that come here work on the farm, you get out of high school, take 2 years and just go travel the world and do anything. Work some menial job just to get money to get to the next destination. But go out and find out who you are, live some experiences. You can come back. Now you can practice making decisions on yourself first before you start giving somebody else from any kind of information. And so we need to go back to being communities of self-reliant, self-acknowledged, self-accepted people. Otherwise it's a bunch of amateurs trying to help a bunch of inexperienced amateurs get their life in order and trying to make a working community. And I just don't see that happening.
Yeah, I
And
thought that was quite interesting in the States, when literally I used to watch films before I sort of knew what was going on, and everybody seemed to be in therapy. And I thought, this is really weird. Why does everybody need to be in therapy? I just I don't understand what has gone so terribly wrong over there for that to be the case. And then when you look at that industry, and it is an industry that it's of course that is one way to do it, but there are other ways. And what I was going to ask you about is, do you think we've got, I think I was explaining to you yesterday that I've gone through sort of the physical, then the mental, then the spiritual. That's been my journey, because once you fix the physical, I then fix the mental, basically by challenging myself. I went through my shadow work, right? And we've talked about this a little bit. I don't know how much time
Mhm.
I've got, where I deliberately, put myself in a situation and went off the rails for a couple of years. And it's because, do you know what? It's because I never did it as a kid, like you said. I never did it. I never lost control. I did this and then went to this. I got this degree, went to that job, blah, 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 on this, treadmill. And I realized I've got to get off this treadmill. I've got, and so I deliberately put myself into that kind of breaking point and worked out, went off piste. And that allowed me to see that, everything isn't perfect all the time. I'm not perfect all the time. I started seeing how consequences of my actions. I started seeing that of how my dark side, that I'm not perfect all the time, and actually nobody is. And we have a light and a dark side, and to think we're always good or think we're always bad or whatever is not true. You need a balance of the two things. And then once I went through that, I think that then allowed me to go on my spiritual journey. And what I was going to ask you is, do you think people can really heal physically or mentally without also doing that spiritual side?
I think it depends on the depth of the healing, because if they experienced a bad relationship where they got some trauma, physical trauma, some abuse, they can heal that to an extent from that one instance. But if they find themselves going through a series of really abusive relationships or deceptive relationships, then we have to take a deeper look, and go, okay, why are you constantly going into these situations? Why are you constantly going into these self-abusive situations, and staying there? Then we have to look at something a lot deeper and going back into a core. And maybe that takes them what you're calling that dark side journey to really figure out why, and that deeper healing that's needed. But even when we're starting to look at like the good side, or they're not all bad, what's dark, these are still perceptions confined by the social structures and social limitations of what we want to call our social ethics and boundaries. I mean, we can look at some systems that what's taboo here could be just fine on the other side of the earth. And what's bad over there, we find okay here. I mean, I've told people you could take a beer can and put it on the table and give it an altar and tell a child that that's God, and they'll grow up believing that. So that's when it comes back into what's your personal truth. And that often you have to go into that, what you're calling that dark side, to really find out. Because you can take somebody into that dark side and they go, you know what, I like it here. Okay.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, I mean, you and I can come up with personal instances like that. We can say we went there and we liked it and we didn't want to leave. But at the same time, it's like, if I want to be a functional free person in society, I can't bring that part of me out into the social world, workforce. And so, in direct answer, I think is it depends on the depth of healing and to what extent per situation, you know, um, would be yes
Yeah.
or no if they need to go to the dark side or not.
And I think what you just said is really important there, because being able to know who you are, the good and the bad in you, and admitting what that is, whatever it is about admitting. It's about taking responsibility and accountability, but not being afraid of it. And that's why I see a lot of people like, this used to be me. Before I went on that little off-piste adventure, which was a lot of fun. But when I went off, I was always, because of, you right, social acceptance, just kind of, I had to be perfect. I had to do everything right. I had to do this, that, and the other right. That's what I had to do. And then I was like thinking, but for who? Hold on. But what
Mm-hmm.
about if I'm not perfect? And I had all this responsibility. And so if I ever did anything wrong, which of course I did accidentally or deliberately, whatever I did, I never used to face it. I used to, no, I didn't do that. No, I didn't. And I used to make excuses. So then I'd never learn from it, because in my head I'd gone, no, 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 I didn't do it. And then once I, accepted myself with all my flaws and all my gifts all together as one, I can now take accountability. I can go, man, I absolutely I fucked that up completely. So very sorry about that. And now I'm going to move on. And people think then when you are, let's say I'm apologizing to somebody because I've done something incorrectly or for whatever reason, that when I'm apologizing, part of that is admitting it and giving that out. But actually, I'm forgiving myself. I'm apologizing to myself and getting it out so I can see it. Because once I say it, it's out there in the open. It's for me. It's my gift to admit it, because then I can heal and I can get better and I can improve.
Right. But sometimes even with the apology, you're terminizing it as an apology, but it's real close to also like the confession, So, and sometimes a lot of the work that I do is being that confidant. The person just wants to open up and tell somebody that is in a neutral position in their life, that, and this is something that when for a while, I was working with a lot of political figures or people that were high international CEOs, and everybody around them was this wanted something. So they were always on guard. And all my appointments, were under the guise of a fishing trip or a construction consultation. So these people could just unload. They couldn't apologize to people around them because that put them in a vulnerable position. So they couldn't trust their environment, but they still needed to get it out because it was like you said, like earlier, it will come out, and usually at some inopportune moment in public, that causes more consequences. So they need this, the check valve, the safety release valve, and sometimes the shaman is that safety release valve where they can just like let it all out. And sometimes I just in the appointments, I listen to a lot of people would think some like translators. So I have to say you do hear some strange things. And you're like, yeah, it's strange to you, it's strange to them, but it's not strange to me. You should see or listen to some of the things I hear. So that's a real important part of personal work, is getting this stuff out. Whether you're walking in the forest by yourself, you're swimming in the sea by yourself, and verbalize it, because you're putting what's up here and in here out on the physical plane through the vibration and resonance of your voice and registering that on the physical plane. That's the connection you're making with your mind, your spirit, and then the physical plane of the earth is a cleansing process. And people need to do that as a regular maintenance habit to keep themselves in a good alignment in their environment, just to maintain the peace on those 3 points of physical, mental, and spiritual.
Very good. Perfectly said. So if somebody was going to wanting to get in contact with you, firstly, how can they do that? And what would you say to someone saying, "Oh, I've always wondered what it would be like to work with a shaman." What what would you say to them? And why do you think they might be thinking that in their mind?
Well, there's a lot of perceptions about shamanism and the shaman themselves. A lot of people think that we're this cleanly spiritual person that's always in balance and things like that, and that's really not the case. The real shaman is like, I had traditional training in my apprenticeship, and a lot of it's tribal mythologies and so on. But the more that I go deeper into shamanism, I wish I paid more attention to chemistry and physics in school. Because that's where the real wonders are, when you start looking at the intelligence and adaptations of bacterium and viruses. Or the conscious architecture, engineering, and design of just life in itself. Those are the real mysteries of shamanism. And so, but people want to, I think what they're doing when they're coming to see me, anybody else, they feel that there's something else behind the scenes. And that's very true, because by social programming, they've always been trained to just be blinders on and look at the superficial page one. So I think they're always looking a depth, more meaning to life. But also I want to point out to them is, if this is the human And this is normal parameters, a little bit to the right, a little bit left of most people. Shamanism goes a lot farther than that. All right, we go way over here and then back to the middle, way over here, the other side. It's just constant fluctuation like that. And it's not really linear, it's spherical. When they want to work with the shaman, a lot of times it's that journey, and they'll go to a certain point, and your mind and spirit can make these changes and adaptations very, very quickly. But we're these electrochemical physio units that have this time factor to deal with on the physical plane and this side of space. And you have to allow for that physiology to catch up. And a good example of that was when you tell somebody something or they see something and they go, oh, and they feel like the top of their head's opened up and they get all the goosebumps. I really think that's an alarm system to shut down that process because they're just going too fast. Because I've worked with people that were like really getting it, and then they just hit the wall and go, wow. Before I was just like in awe of mysteries of life. Now I feel panicked and I don't know what to do. I feel lost. I'm like, because you're trying to hold on to past references, for your reality. Don't do that. It's like trying to hold on to a series of lies, which is an anchor, and you're trying to swim. And so a lot of when they come to see, it's this need to explore deeper, and they feel something. They're going through these other changes spiritually, and they need to know why, what's happening, because they don't know. Unfortunately, all the people that have the best promoters, the best producers, and the biggest finances are out on the internet more, and they have a tendency to lead people down the wrong road. And by the time I get them, they've been to 2 or 3 of these people, and there's lots of cleanup to do. Going back to renovations of bad workers,
Yeah, because I think that's probably the danger, isn't it? That you can be opening someone's mind to something. You're deconstructing what they have, created as a reality, and opens their mind to the fact that what they're perceiving as reality isn't necessarily what it is, and it could be very different, and you're providing a different perspective, which can be very freeing, but it can also then be very scary. I mean, and a lot of people, I think, of us that have been on this journey, and it's happened to a lot of people over the last 3 years because of the situation that we've in. We've had to re-examine everything we've been taught. And it can make you, and I can see this, in this more, awakened community, the newly awake, you get to the point where you're like, oh my gosh, my whole life is a lie. And it can be really overwhelming and really scary. And so I think it's great that there's people like you about, because, it can drive you crazy, but there is hope with the right people. There's good advice out there, right? And, people don't have to worry just because their perception has changed of reality. It doesn't mean that it's a bad thing. It can just feel different.
Well, the other part about it, again, is you have to get off page 1. There's plenty of good advice out there for a lot of things. But it's like saying, look, here's a lot of really good tools if you want to build a house. But okay, that's great. So the person buys the tools and they want to build a house. Now what? They need to know how to use the tools. They need to know how to use it, apply the advice. And you're right, when they get to this point and they see things that, oh, my life's a lie, it looks kind of hopeless, you can get the advice and they don't know how to do it. But where do I start? You can just create an even worse situation like that. So we have this golden rule in shamanism. It's okay to take people where they don't want to go. Okay, because that can catalyze some change. It's really wrong to take people where they cannot go. And you have to be able to have that sonar or radar with that ping back with that person, to be able going back into empathing, be able to feel how they respond to your words, to know when to stop, to let the physiology catch up, or to give them a lot more in-depth guidance on applying that advice. But the other thing is, and this is something that everybody listening, this is their part that's really important that they have to do. We know that you're not going to be honest with us when you come to see us. We know that for a fact. And I tell all my apprentices and new shamans, don't take what they're telling you on face value. And this is why, too, I have 2-hour minimum appointments, because I know, and just like most therapists or massage therapists, they know that you're not going to relax and start to open up for about 45 minutes, maybe an hour. So out of that 2 hours, I only get 1 hour of real progress, because people are defensive. They're worried about rejection. They're worried about what I'm going to think. And they want to just give me a little bit at a time to see my reaction if I think they're weird or crazy or whatever. It's just like, trust me, I've heard it all. Or when I think I do, I get stunned and surprised again, but that's cool. And so you have to be open with us. And we know it's going to take you a couple of appointments before you do that, unless you've seen us in action from somebody we work with in your family or coworkers or something. But when you give us misinformation and we feel that that's not right, we're going to have to start searching for something else, because we're feeling this isn't all coming together right. And that throws us off a little bit, because we don't know. We learn to trust our feelings. And now you're telling us that's not right. So now we have to recalibrate and go, well, okay, maybe I am wrong, So that's the other thing with people, that they're not open enough with us to be able to give the best information back, the best advice, or the best guidance on applying that advice. See, so it's a two-way street on this.
Okay. I think that's very fair. And I'm just thinking about my own experiences, and even going for Reiki healing. There's a absolutely wonderful lady who's down the road from me. We've met each other, and I'm talking to her about nutrition and the water and plant medicine, and she's been working with me with Reiki healing, and she's just phenomenal. This woman's got such power, and again, she's quite new to this, and she's just got these gifts, got these powers, and but the most important thing is we had this conversation before, and she makes you do this, and the appointment lasts 2 hours, like you say, and I'll see some people just laying hands on for 30 minutes, but she needs you to open up first so you can connect, so that then she can do her work. And it makes such a difference.
It does. But here's the other part about that. It's just, who does the best energy work, the best? They're children, prepubescent, children, preteen children. They're just awesome, because they just have this unconditional love that they're going to put out there. And whatever you want to put label on the stuff, like these healing circles. I love going to places starting to do healing. They go, oh, is it a Reiki circle? Is it? No. As a matter of fact, I want you to leave all that stuff home. I want to show you something completely different. And as an example, I say here, you got this person laying on the massage table, for instance, like we always set these massage tables up. And I tell people that, imagine if I gave you a kitten, you'd take that kitten and you'd hold it, and you would just give it this unconditional love. If it was a puppy, same thing. If a baby, you're going to be so careful, but you're just going to automatically open up and love that baby. Mm-hmm. Why can't you do that to the person laying on that table? And they're just like, but there's it. And I've worked with people with, one of them full-blown AIDS, looked like The Walking Dead. A month later, looked awesome. So many people with cancer, the tumors are gone. Doctor says the equipment was wrong. But it was that, just training people to be able to drop all the stories, all just the total bullshit, and unconditionally open up and love that person on the table, even if they look like whatever. Just get out of that. And when people can do that, they see that their hands-on healing work, the proficiency rating goes up, their prosperity changes, they have more positive cash flow, and that's just part of it. But when you can get people to do that, everything in their life just changes. And it's just a simple energy exercise. Here, quick example. I did this thing in Dusseldorf, Germany, because most of my people there were all academics. And we got one person that had never been there before, lay on the table, and I'm like, would you like to volunteer for an experiment? And she goes, yeah. But when she was in the other room, I told everybody, this is what we're going to do. We're going to just sit in our chair, not even stand around the table, and envision the energy coming up out of the floor, from the back of the table, in through her feet, up through her body and out over her hands are going to be hanging out the table. Okay? And everybody's, yeah. And do it at your own speed, just a constant flow happening. And then when she laid down, I said, you don't know what we're going to do, right? She goes, no, never been here before? No. So we did this for about 5 minutes. And I said, Miss, would you tell us what you felt? And she described exactly what we were envisioning. After she had said that, some people got up, went and got their coats and shoes, and just left. And the ones that remained went through two reactions. Some people were like, whoa, it worked. And then some people were like, oh shit, it worked. Those people didn't come back. The other people progressed, and this is where people's minds are. It's like that little kitten in the house. It's got his head behind the refrigerator, but his ass sticks out, thinking, if you can't see me, I can't see you, or vice versa. And no, everything's public information, and the energetics of this is so easy and so powerful. That's why our handlers or puppeteers don't want you to know it. And we can change everything so fast with just 1/10 of 1% of the world's population. We could turn all this around so quickly by just focused thought and a simple desire of I want to live in a better world. But people automatically come up with all the reasons why they think that can't work.
I think that's absolutely spot on, and a really brilliant story. Thank you for that. And it's absolutely true. I was listening to a story from somebody else today when they saw something which was not only them, 5 people saw a phenomenon which was unexplainable. I'm not going to go into the detail here. It's a distraction. But one person didn't want to believe it, even though they could see it, didn't want to believe it. So they limited themselves. And what I've been saying to people, and maybe we should do a little bit of an exercise to close stuff off and say, right, do you know when you wake, I say to people, when you wake up tomorrow morning, you're going to wake up exactly as you've expected to wake up. You're going to be in the town you're expected to, in the frame of mind you decide that you are. Everything you choose about tomorrow, you've decided today. You've made that choice. So when it turns out the way it is, like you can say to yourself, oh, tomorrow I've got a really busy day at work, I'm going to be really tired. That's what's going to happen. Whereas so a lot of what you're creating, you're already deciding what it's going to be like. And if you imagine you've got the freedom for it to be different tomorrow, for the sky to be different, you can change everything about your reality if you program it. And that's what we are, a powerful creator. So everybody listen to this now. What do you want? I mean, you're not going to be able to influence other people, right? Everyone's got free will. You can't say, I don't know, Marilyn Monroe wakes from the dead and comes down my drive, because you can't control people. But you can control your reality. And if you get good at this and practice, and like you say, the more of us that do it together, the more that reality will become real.
Yeah, you control, no matter what the situation is. You might not control the situation, but you can control your response. Here, you want to do a global, worldwide thing for everybody listening here. And it's something that got me booted off of TikTok the last time I suggested this.
Okay.
But, I was saying at 9 o'clock, no matter what, 9 o'clock in the morning, no matter what time zone you're in, you just say, for this time, I want everything to be exposed. I want to see the absolute truth, whether I like it or not. And I want everybody respond. I want to see the absolute truth about everything. Okay? And just start there. And then also say, I am willing to do whatever I need to do, whatever mental process, thought process, prayer, whatever you want to call it. I will do whatever I need to do to make the world a better place. That's it.
That's a great
And
idea.
if everybody just commits to that from now until the rest of their life, because I do this throughout the day. I talk aloud to the horses, the barn, my boat, whatever. And this is what I want to see. I want this. Why not?
I agree with this. I do the same. I look at the clouds and you're going to be clear today. Okay, it's going to be clear. The sky is clear. I look at it. I try not to look at it. I used to look at it and go, it's going to be raining all day today. I'm like, well, it's going to be now, isn't it? And I think the more that, and this is why there's television and movies, because they're trying to put the same idea in as many people's brains as possible. And so why can't you write your own movie?
Well, no, that is it. And like that biochemist in Hungary told me when I was asking how does my work, how am I functioning, how am I getting these results with people? It's just simple. You help people rewrite the story of their life in a logical way they can accept and understand. And the spine does the rest. The body's amazing. Well, the same thing happens if you want to constantly spread fear over social media. You know, you're going to create the same physiological effect in the world population. Well, I want to create a different effect. I want to create the people that just so, yeah, I can change it. I can live a wonderful life. I can be in great health. I can have positive cash flow and prosperity, you know. But, you know, it takes people like you and I to be the living examples of that.
Mm-hmm.
When people look and go, well, hell, it works for them, it might work for me. Yes, it will. Let us help
Yes,
you
it
do
will.
this. You know?
There's nothing magic about us. There's nothing magic about us. We just believe this stuff and do it. We just
Yeah.
apply it. So listen, everybody. Let's just listen to what's just been said. I think this is really important. So 9 o'clock, you can do it in the morning, you can do it at the night, and you just say want everything to be revealed, and also you have to say it to yourself. You have to make yourself accountable. And I am capable of doing whatever is necessary to make this world a better place. I believe in yourself. Say it. 9 o'clock, morning and night. Let's all just start thinking this stuff together instead of like, this is a bad day tomorrow, or whatever it is. Let's be positive and see what happens. What's the worst that's going to happen? Can't get
Yeah.
any worse, can it?
Because, I mean, if you don't do anything, you can expect them more of what you've been getting.
Nothing's going to change unless you do something different. So, exactly.
Yeah.
So let's do this. The 9 o'clock slot, and maybe we'll check in. And well, I'm going to speak to some people because not many people have come on just now, but they'll pick this video up later, and we'll try and get this out and about, and we'll try not to get it banned. Because well, if it gets banned, then we definitely know it works, and then we're doing it anyway, right? So we can spread the knowledge a different way. So I'm just going to. We've actually got on a lot because I could just talk to you forever, a lot longer than I normally do. So I hope that people that watch this video enjoy, what we've said. I'll maybe write the write-up a little bit more in detail so people can see the topics. And if we can get Shaman Hawk to put his link in about where people can contact him, but also you guys contact me, and I'll make sure that I'll put you in touch. And I just want to say massive thank you to you, Shaman Hawk. Absolutely brilliant conversation as ever. I think we've given out some really good knowledge. Your experience and your practical knowledge is just fantastic to hear. So thank you so much for spending the time with me today. Thank you.
Oh, pleasure to be here. Thank you.
Thanks. And so to everybody, have a good evening, and it's nearly 9 o'clock my time, so I'm going to be on the case already. So
Okay.
blessings and love to you all.
All right. Catch you guys later.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye.